After playing Bendy and the Ink Machine as well as Bendy and the Dark Revival, in only a matter of a couple of days for the very first time, I decided I was going to make a video comparing the two, and I would rate which one was my favorite at the end. Now, the way that we're going to do this is I have just set aside a list of pro and cons for each game. So now we're just going to go ahead and get into it.
Bendy and the Ink Machine.
Of course, we're starting with the original game. Now, this game, it was very, very slow moving, but it really worked for me. So the pros that I have for this are that the atmosphere is great. I feel like this atmosphere fits a lot better than the one in the Dark Revival, although the one in the Dark Revival was still good. I feel like Bendy and the Ink Machine did a way better job at capturing the feel that would fit that game. The really warm lighting, along with the wooden walls and dark atmosphere, it really feels like an abandoned workshop from the 1930s. Now with the Dark Revival, it was great, but especially outside, all I could think about was Batman. It just looked like Batman, and it kind of took the spookiness out of it for me, personally. Now, Bendy and the Dark Revival's atmosphere isn't necessarily bad. It's not bad whatsoever. It's actually really good, even if it makes me think of Batman. But I feel like Bendy and the Ink Machine captures that atmosphere a little bit better. The second pro of Bendy and the Ink Machine is that I think that it personally has better flow and less crazy twists. And I honestly prefer that simpler and more minor twists. And not some crazy gymnastic backflip twist that doesn't really make any sense and just seems like it was set into that game just to be like a crazy, whoa, twist. Now, the Dark Revival did have some great twists, like Alice not actually being dead, and Bendy actually being the ink demon set into a little prison. But the weird, crazy twists that don't make any sense, such as like Wilson trying to... I don't even know what Wilson's trying to do. He keeps like pretending to be good, but then, whoa, actually he's bad, whoa, never saw that coming, oh, but no, he's good again. Oh, turns out he's bad again, and he actually wants to kill you. Ha! Or like the fact that Audrey is Joey's ink daughter? Those are the two main ones that I have a problem with, that kind of just get in the way and you're like, what? It just seems like it was set in story for no other reason than to try to be like, whoa, whoa. But they did do some really good twists, such as, like I said, the Alice and Bendy thing. The other thing that I really like about Bendy and the Ink Machine is that it really brings me back to dreams that I used to have. And I really enjoy that. Like, it seems like those nightmares that I used to have. Just the way that the atmosphere is set up. This goes hand in hand with the atmosphere, by the way. But it just really feels like I'm immersed into it because of that reason. Now, this is a totally personal thing. Obviously, this probably doesn't happen with anybody else, because everybody has different dreams, but I used to have dreams that seemed very similar to this, and to be reminded of those crazy, dark, nostalgic nightmares that I used to have whenever I was little, really just adds a whole nother level to it for me, because I remember it's like I'm back into it. A really good example in my head about this is Bertram Piedmont's part, the projectionist part, and whenever you're walking on the planks and there's a giant black abyss of ink below you with torn up toys and torn up corpses all around you. It really adds to it a lot for me, which I don't feel like that about the Dark Revival. So Bendy and the Ink Machine gets a point for that immediately. Another reason that I really like Bendy and the Ink Machine is Sammy Lawrence. He honestly sucks ass. He sucks. Sammy is an absolute loser. He's a huge coward, a wannabe and rejected prophet, and he's just weak overall. But his voice actor did an astounding job, especially whenever he cuts through the boards and starts screaming at you. It just works, and it really adds that cherry on top for me. His voice actor did amazing. And the last pro for this is, honestly,
Alice is so fucking hot for no reason, Jesus Christ!
Now that's enough talking about the good stuff for Bendy and the Ink Machine. I'm gonna go over to the things that I didn't like about it. Number one is, it just has worse gameplay than the Dark Revival overall. You can barely do anything, you can interact with stuff, and you can hit things with a pipe or an axe. You can also jump, barely, and you can't even run. You slightly speed up your walking speed. The Dark Revival fixes all of this. You can crouch, you can run, the animations are much more detailed and lively. You can banish demons, you can everything, you can teleport even. Another thing is that the Butcher Gang is less of a threat. It doesn't feel like a gang. It feels like random enemies that spawn out of nowhere just to give you a hard time. They aren't even that powerful, and they just are a little bit of annoying and don't have much personality, while the Dark Revival actually treats it like a little gang. They literally come out of the ceiling, attack you, take your shit, and then leave. They don't actually take anything. I just pretended like they did. They just hurt you. Rather than the Butcher Gang being the placeholders in the Dark Revival, the Lost Ones are the placeholders, which I feel like makes a lot more sense. The fourth problem that I had with Bendy and the Ink Machine was actually a really bad one, is that the puzzles didn't make any sense. I had to look up a walkthrough for almost every single puzzle because I was spending like an hour on it. It was ridiculous. And it just doesn't give you any sense of direction whatsoever. In fact, if you watch my stream, I keep complaining that the objective is find a new exit for 60% of the game. And that is all the pros and cons for Bendy and the Ink Machine.
Bendy and the Dark Revival.
Now, I actually got really lucky for this. I have an Xbox. I also have a laptop, but I really don't try to play games on there if I can help it, because I just genuinely don't like the feel of it. One day after I beat Bendy and the Ink Machine, Bendy and the Dark Revival comes out on Xbox. It was a crazy coincidence, but I obviously bought it, downloaded it, played it immediately, and streamed it if you want to go check it out. I also streamed Bendy and the Ink Machine. Whatever, enough self-promotion. The first thing that I like better about Bendy and the Dark Revival is that it just genuinely has better gameplay in general. I don't really have to explain. I already did. The second thing that I like about Bendy and the Dark Revival is the Ink Demon. In the first game, the Ink Demon wasn't really a character to me. Yeah, he was a character, but he was a very minor one at that. He only showed up a couple of times, and overall, despite trying to be the main villain, he wasn't. Alice was the main villain, and she wasn't even supposed to be. In the second game, that's completely fixed. He is a direct threat all the time. He can show up randomly, he has a connection with the character, and is genuinely the main villain. Another thing is just the obvious, better graphics. I don't have to go into this too much because you can just look at it and see. Although I like that dead, empty feeling in the first game, it didn't have much depth to it. And I don't think it was really supposed to, but adding the depth to it does make it a lot better. And all the character models look out of this world. Another thing about the Dark Revival is that it has great horror. Like, I was actually scared playing this game. It was a lot better at capturing the horror than the first game was. And just the amount of suspense is crazy, especially when you unlock the fourth, Carly. Carly, I have very mixed emotions about her. So, Carly, if you don't know, or Slicer, goes by both, is supposed to be the fourth member of the Butcher Gang, and boy is she something. You can summon her by walking into a door with a sign that says, "Come say hi." And you can play an audio tape and hear the creator talking about Carly and how she was rejected. Then there's a box in the corner of the room that you just want to open so bad, and inside of it is this crazy looking Butcher Gang member that we haven't seen before. Once you look away from this box, Carly disappears. And then once you go to open the door, well, she spawns and she scares the living shit out of you. I have a lot of mixed emotion about Carly, but she definitely added a lot to the game and made this game a lot scarier. Also, this isn't just because I simp, but Alice's part was insane. It was probably my favorite part in the entire game because of just It was great. It was set up perfectly. Especially that introduction, where you're drinking the Gilson, and then on the third sip, you lower the cup and she's standing right behind you, and then she drags you out and she puts you in an electrical chair, and you have to solve this crazy-ass fucking puzzle, and you notice how off the hinges she is now. And we know it's because after she dies, she got dragged back to the ink puddle and lost even more of her sanity. Last game, she was honestly more of a neutral character. She would help you, but she would also be against you, because she just did what she wanted. She did what was in her favor. She didn't really care about you. This game, she cares about you, alright. Because she literally wants to eat you. She is cooking you alive in the electrical chair. That's why she wants you to get it wrong every single time. She's not mad because she necessarily lost the game. She's mad because her food got away from her. She's fucking great. Listen to this line right here.
Hold on tight, honey. Here it comes. 3, 2, 1. Nice golden brown. Let's see if you can do better this time.
She has lost absolutely any sanity that she had from the last game. And then this crazy ass bitch comes out with a fucking Tommy gun and tries to shoot you. And just tries to shoot you up. She's off the rails, and I love it. Another thing that I really love about Benny and the Dark Revival was the end. The end of the Dark Revival was great. Whenever you encounter all of your friends again and they all help you, and while you're actually the Ink Demon, you have possessed the Ink Demon necessarily, and you're trying to end it, that whole sequence was amazing. Like, I can't give that a good enough rating. I was not expecting that at all, but it was great. That's enough praise from me. Let's get into the things that I didn't necessarily like. Number 1 was actually a really big problem for me, and it kept getting in my way of playing the game. And I don't know if this was just an Xbox thing, because it imported incorrectly, but it was insanely glitchy, and oftentimes ruined the experience. I saw a lot of reviews saying that the animation alley would crash all the time. Personally, I didn't have to deal with that, but I did have to deal with it crashing whenever Alice appeared, and it really just ruined the hype for me a little bit, because I couldn't get a dead-on reaction, like I was supposed to. Also, another thing that would mess up was, I would fall through the map, the Ink Demon would spawn during cutscenes, and I couldn't even progress in the puzzle, despite how much I love that part. I couldn't even talk to the hostages. I couldn't figure out the puzzle. I had to look it up, because it was glitched out and it wouldn't let me work. I tried restarting it and everything. It just didn't work. And imagine how much better that level would have been for me if I could have played it correctly, especially since it's one of my favorites in the entire game. It could have been bumped up so much if I could have played it correctly, but I couldn't because it glitched out. Also, another problem that I have is that it doesn't really hit as hard for me with the atmosphere. I already went over this. It feels like Batman. That's just the problem that I have with it. Another thing is that it's too hard. It's not as hard as the last one was in certain areas, but this one definitely has a harder combat, especially at the end. That's the main issue that I had whenever I say it's too hard. The boss battle, it was confusing, and it didn't really make much sense, and it wasn't really that fair, especially since you had to restart every single time you died. I also don't like that you don't regenerate your health, which doesn't make any sense, because isn't Audrey not even human, but Henry is a human? Right? So why can Henry regenerate, but Audrey can't? It's just a problem that I have with me. Another thing was that it was predictable in a lot of areas. A lot of areas, it wasn't predictable. Like the Ink Demon section, or the Alice section. I did not have any clue that that would happen, but Everything else was very predictable. I could kind of figure out what was going on and what was gonna happen, and it just wasn't a fun experience as it could. It wasn't as fun as it could have been. The last thing, and the biggest problem that I have with this game, especially since she is my favorite character, was the lazy Alice death. This kind of pissed me off a little bit, and I was immensely disappointed because she died the exact same way that she did the last game. There was no creative stuff. She died from the exact same person in the exact same way. And it just was really a letdown for me, because they could have done so much more, especially with that engine. We could have saw her actually physically being drugged back to the ink puddle. Imagine that. That would have been awesome, but we just saw Allison stab her in the heart again with some stupid dialogue about, "You have our face. It's my hour." Whatever she said. I don't remember. But it was a huge letdown. We could have had so much more, but they took the lazy route, and we saw her die the exact same way. It was a big letdown for me. Alright, that was all the pros and cons for Bendy and the Dark Revival versus Bendy and the Ink Machine. Now, my favorite, this was really, really tough, since honestly, they're tied in their own different ways. I like Bendy and the Ink Machine for different reasons than I do for Bendy and the Dark Revival. But after a lot of hard thinking, I've come to the conclusion that Bendy and the Ink Machine is overall a better game for me. Now, I know that's probably going to get a lot of hate, but I really just enjoyed that game a little bit more, and it's a lot more replayable. You know what I'm saying? Bendy and the Dark Revival doesn't seem very replayable, while Bendy and the Ink Machine does. I also have that personal dream connection that I was talking about earlier with Bendy and the Ink Machine. So, that was my last Bendy video. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this. If you guys have any problems with this video, comment them down below, and I'll see you next time.